As an executive coach, it's important that to do your best in a coaching session that you not fall into certain traps during the conversation. You've likely heard of the advice trap, made famous by Michael Stanier, and you're probably also aware of the judgment trap, where you actually start to judge your client based on things that they're saying, and then you start to lose your ability to be objective and neutral in the conversation. Well, then there's another trap that I think is even easier to fall into than the other two, and one we have to be very careful about. I'll share about it with you in this video. Here's the scenario. Your client comes to the session. It's a new relationship. You don't know them that well yet. And they say that they would like to talk about this situation that has come up with one of their colleagues. They had a meeting, they were discussing a way forward for their group, a strategy, and they clashed with their colleague, and they ended up getting quite heated. It seems that every time they get into a disagreement with this colleague, the conversation takes a turn for the worse. They want to think of ways to stop that from happening. Okay, that's the objective of the coaching session, right? Let's talk about ways that you might respond differently to this colleague the next time you're in a meeting and you have a disagreement. You could get specific and say, what specifically would you like to achieve in this session and why is it important? And then reflect back to them what you're hearing to ensure that you have clarity before moving on. That's perfect. But then you ask this question. Tell me a little bit about this colleague of yours that you keep clashing with. So then your client tells you a little bit. And then you ask, does this client have seniority over you? Does this client have more tenure than you in the company? Does this client have influence with others? Does this client have certain traits that you disagree with in general? Okay, this is all interesting, right? As I'm saying these questions, you might be thinking to yourself, yeah, I'd like to know about that. And that sounds pretty interesting. And yeah, I could see how that could be helpful. We don't want to ask those questions. Those are not relevant to focusing on your client, what's in their control, and what's really beneath the surface that's agitating your client. It's less about what the other person is doing and who they are and how they behave, how they think, and more about how your client responds. What triggers them? What is it that they're so bothered about? What are they afraid of? If we focus on those things, we could actually make great headway towards the client's objective. If we focus on the colleague and satisfying our curiosity, we might not get to what the client is actually paying you for. Remember, the client is paying you to coach them to think differently and act differently. They're not paying you to learn about all the various characters and their stories. So be really careful about this because, as I said at the beginning, the context trap, I think, is one of the easiest for us to fall into. And it's because we don't always know when to say when. One question that may help you to understand things a little bit better, I don't think that's a trap and you're way out of bounds. But one question may then make you curious to learn a little bit more. And it might also lead your client to believe that context is important. And so then they may digress. And now you have to interrupt them and say, well, actually, we don't need to know about that. That might confuse your client. And now you're off on the wrong foot in the coaching session. You're both in the context trap. And that's even harder to get out of. I hope this helps you to kind of start to think differently about what's most important in the coaching session. It's your intense focus on the client. Save the context for your own curiosity in a casual conversation. That's not coaching. Maybe you have lunch with your client. Maybe after the coaching is done, you might learn more about other people at the company as they're expressing satisfaction with how great your coaching was for them in terms of really focusing on what was in their control, what they could change. and they had such a great result. I hope this video helps you to think about it in that way. If so, please let me know. Like it, comment on it, share it with others, and of course, subscribe to the channel as I regularly release new videos. And if you have questions about this, the context trap, please post them in the comments or email me at michael@BAECExecutivecoach.com. And of course, if you'd like to go deeper with my executive coaching training and certification program, you're welcome to do so. Of course. Visit the centerforexecutivecoaching.com and learn about our distance learning program where I teach classes online most weeks of the year, or an in-person seminar, which I lead several times a year, where you'll spend 3.5 days with me learning so much more about how to be successful and effective as an executive coach. You'll get your certification by the end of the seminar, and then you'll be able to enter into our distance learning program after that because it's all included. And we can continue to work together, and you can benefit from my 15 years of experience in the world of coaching and growing. Thank you very much.